AM 1380, The Biz, the Wall Street Business Network.
Are you one of the 9 million Floridians living in a community managed by a property manager or HOA? If you've ever wondered what your rights are as a resident or what your role is as a volunteer board member, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Condo Coaches, your resource for when your gated community starts to feel more like you're stuck behind bars, or when that guy next door decides that a hot pink Chevy on cinder blocks really sets the tone for the neighborhood. The Condo Coaches is brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. And now your host, Johnny Torres.
Hi, everybody. It's the Condo Coaches radio show. About 2 weeks post-Hurricane Irma, so that continues to be the topic of the day, as I'm sure it is in your world, in your neighborhood, at work, at home. People just I still get asked almost every single day, how'd your family do? How'd your house do? Do you have power? And again, we're about 2 weeks out now, about a week and a half, I guess, but by the time the show airs, it'll be about 2 weeks out. It's the Condo Coaches radio show. We are a team of volunteers sharing our knowledge, our experience, and our expertise to help you run your community or neighborhood association effectively, efficiently, and on budget. So that's right. If you are living under a homeowner association, condo association, any type of association that dictates the do's and don'ts of your neighborhood, that's what we excel at in helping you navigate the issues and the challenges and of course all the adventures that come along with living under a homeowner association. With me as always, head coach Dean Akers. How are you, sir?
Johnny, I'm doing good. I'm ready for discombobulation. I don't know if that's in the dictionary, but our offices last week, it was like one notch a cog off of everything,
Yeah, still.
Drivers. And so this week we're trying to get back to normal. But then I get up this morning early before a meeting I had real early.
Yep.
And I had the news on, and the weather guy had something out over Puerto Rico headed this way.
Yeah, Hurricane Maria. Well, and you know what's funny is we had Jose, which could be Joseph, right? And now we've got Maria, which is Mary.
Right.
And someone saying like, oh, Jesus, just let it stop. It's
right.
Like,
and now the hurricane's hitting the northeast.
That's right. Jose's still hanging out.
Yeah.
That way.
Which now, narrowly missed us. They thought that was going to come our way, or at the very least hit South Florida again. And they got off, not as easy as they did with Irma. I'm sorry, not as they didn't get off like they did with Irma. Irma obviously did quite a bit of damage down South Florida. Still a lot of friends and family members of mine down in the Miami-Dade and Broward County area still without power. But I know it's been interesting to watch my Facebook feed because I have people from all over the country. But again, the primary geographical areas are South Florida and Tampa Bay.
Right.
And you feel bad for the people who've gone for a number of days without power. My best friend, in fact, got a note, I think yesterday or this morning from FP&L saying that he wasn't going to have power till Tuesday. So he's now been for an entire week without power. And it's tough because you saw all the preparations that FP&L did. A lot of the power companies really tried to prepare themselves as good as possible, with the exception of Jacksonville, but that's a whole nother issue they got going on up there. But FP&L, I think, seemed to really do everything that they could to prepare for this, bringing in everybody as soon as the storm passed, and they had just thousands of electrical workers, that were ready to go. And I think the big theme of this show today is going to be finding those deficiencies, right? Finding those weak spots, not only from an infrastructure standpoint in our cities and our communities, but also in our homes, and how this really, I think, for the majority of Florida, is an opportunity to adequately prepare yourself and your home for the next storm.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's just a matter of when. It could be Maria. It could be whatever's after Maria, right? So joining us today is our good friend. We'd like to welcome back, and we call him our disaster coach, Scott Wilcox. How you doing?
Thank you for having me back. I tell you what, I'm going full throttle right now. I think most of my blood right now is coffee and energy drinks because we've been hitting it hard.
Well, I know Dean probably had to promise you like another lunch or dinner at Seasons 52.
He wouldn't even take one
here.
today.
I
Not
couldn't even
today,
take one today.
but trust me, I know there's a rain check on it, because to pull you away from what you're doing right now, I'm sure has been incredibly difficult. We couldn't be any more grateful. We're incredibly grateful to have you here today, because we know not only the value of the work that you're doing out in the community, but also the fact that time is very much an essential part of recovery.
It really is. Yes, absolutely. So thank you for the opportunity. And as soon as we're done, I'm going to be hitting the road and visiting some condominiums out in St. Petersburg today. So
awesome. All right. Well, if you see Scott, please tell him that you're a fan of the Condo Coaches, and it's also the last time you were here was actually one of our most popular episodes, even today.
Well, thank you.
So I think it was relevant even months ago when you were last here, but it's even more relevant now.
I'm happy to do it. I love doing this.
We're going to talk about some of the post-disaster do's and don'ts and issues and things you are seeing out there for people to prepare themselves in case we do get another visit.
Well, this is why I'm proud to be involved. Folks like Scott, I mean, when he and I talked right after the hurricane, he said I could commit to today, but we're just triaging. But these are volunteers. He's got plenty of stuff to go do for real money and stuff. And I had a real cool deal, to digress, but I helped a condominium group on Thursday make a bank presentation, and the board was with me on the bank presentation, and the bank was so blown away by the Condo Coach format of the presentation, he couldn't believe about being a volunteer. And the banker, and this is the vice chairman of a big bank, said to me, I'll volunteer to help people understand banking relationships, not to sell banking. Yeah. But it's just a testimony, and it's Scott. I'm so happy you are able to come in today. And Johnny's right. You got a season 52 ticket with. He told me that would be great as long as it's not with you, Dean.
Right?
Yeah, just send me the gift certificate.
Or maybe you guys step it up. Maybe like Eddie V.
Oh yeah, Eddie V. That works.
So thanks again, Scott, for being on the show. We're going to open the show because we've only got a couple of really quick questions by hitting up our inbox. Okay, now if you have a question, a specific issue that you're dealing with in your community, we'd love to answer it for you on the air. But of course, we also help you take care of it off the air. All you've got to do is reach out to us. There's a few ways you can do that. You can go to thecondocoaches.com. That's our website, thecondocoaches.com. You can email us. Our email address, very easy, help@thecondocoaches.com. That's help@thecondocoaches.com, because that's what we love to do around here. And last but not least is also our phone number. Feel free to give us a call. That's 813-331-5415. 813-331-5415. And the magic of reaching out to us is that not that Dean or I are going to get right back to you, but the fact that we're actually going to plug you in with the condo coach that is best suited to address your issue. So even if you live in South Florida, even if you live in Orlando, or maybe it's a specific issue like banking, like disaster recovery, maybe it's an insurance issue, we're going to team you up with the with the condo coach that is best suited to help you through that issue. So feel free to reach out to us through any of those ways. And again, you can do all of that also on our website, thecondocoaches.com.
If you could remind the viewers, I don't have the date with me, but I got a question. We still have some openings for the CAI Leadership Conference. Remember, we were going to give them away. So anybody that wants to go to Orlando and have the tuition, if you will, paid for, the Condo Coaches have some underwriters that are willing to pick that ticket up. So they just probably need to go to info and tell us.
So that's the entry fee, and then they get to participate in the conference.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the Community Associations Institute Conference coming to Orlando. It's going to be awesome. There's going to be lots of incredible information and experts there to help educate you as a board member or as a resident. All you got to do is also hit us up on our email address, help@thecondocoaches.com, help@thecondocoaches.com. This first question actually goes quite nicely with that. This comes from Pat Wozniak, 941. I'm thinking that's down in the Sarasota area. So Pat, thank you so much for listening to us down there. Pat says she's a board member, and 3 of their board members need to attend classes for their COA. Please advise where you can sign up.
if they need to just send their names and stuff to us, and we'll get them signed up. There's a CAI group down in Sarasota area, if that's where it is, and they will have some of those classes for board members.
Yep.
If they send it in, we'll facilitate getting them in the class, getting the tuition paid and everything, and help them out.
Very cool. Well, and again, for those of you who are listening for the first time, that's Community Associations Institute. They're a supporter of the show. They very much endorse what we're doing here because they're also in that same kind of wheelhouse in terms of wanting to help communities out there run more efficiently, make sure that they're doing the right thing and that there's more harmony in your community. And so anytime, feel free to look up Community Associations Institute, or again, just go to condocoaches.com, and we've got a lot of information there, and it falls very much in line with what they're doing at CAI.
And we're going to be doing trade shows this year. And we're going to do the day. We have two of them, but one of them's the day in life of being a board member. And so far, the times we've done this, people just go crazy about it because we talk about vision statement and communication and everything.
Well, and again, I think oftentimes people that are board members think that they're kind of on this remote island where nobody understands them and nobody is supporting them, and that they're kind of flying solo. And it couldn't be farther from the truth.
Right.
I mean, there are hundreds, thousands of associations out there, board members just like you, that are in the same situation, dealing with the same problems, and that's why we do this show week after week.
Yep.
I got to tell you, probably being a board member is the second hardest non-paying job next to being a parent. I tell you what. So, if you're a board member on a condo or an HOA,
and some of the issues cross over with being a parent.
Absolutely.
It's like parenting.
You have all my respect. You really do.
Oh my gosh! All right, coming up in the next segment, we have a resident who is asking if they can sue their board members. So what that has to do with a security guard being in a pool, we'll tell you in the next segment. That's not a bad tease, right? Again, if you want to learn more about the Condo Coaches, condocoaches.com. Give us a call at 813-331-5415 or hit us up on the email, help@thecondocoaches.com. Segment 2 of the Condo Coaches radio show coming up right after this.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzz driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says, "I'm a catch," more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
We are opening up our inbox. It's the Condo Coaches radio show, sharing our expertise to help you run your community association effectively, efficiently, and on budget. We've only got one more question here, so we're going to knock it out real quick because we definitely want to get to Scott and disaster recovery being the topic of the day. So Cheryl writes to us from a community called Willow Bend, and I won't get any more specific than that because I certainly don't want this to come back on Cheryl, but she's asking how can she sue her homeowners association, or I'm thinking the board members of her association. We don't really have a lot of context and a lot of history to this particular issue, just what she submitted via email here. But apparently she, I guess, witnessed the security guard, which according to her, and I'm sure she pulled this number maybe from a financial report, their community pays about $13,000 for. And this security guard, I guess, was hanging out in the swimming pool, playing with the kids, just having a good old time. But again, we don't know. Maybe he was off the clock. Maybe he lives in the community. There's a lot to this we don't know. But I think, as maybe any resident would do if you were to see a vendor doing something they're not supposed to or something that's out of character, she took to documenting this particular incident where there were kids present in the pool. I think maybe some other residents took issue with that, aside from the issue that there was the security guard in the pool. And so she got a letter from the board saying that she's stalking vendors, and they've, I guess, also called the police to come to her door because of taking pictures at the pool, which again could be a safety concern for parents with children. So to that extent, it's somewhat valid. And of course now Cheryl, I guess, feeling threatened by the board's letter, is now wanting some sort of action to take place. Dean, I mean, is it already past the point where maybe she should just go to the board and kind of hash this out, kind of put it all on the table, try to clear the air, or does it seem like maybe we're already past that point?
Well, one of her questions is, can you sue the board? The answer is you can sue anybody. I could sue you today.
Sure.
I can drive down, spend the money, file a lawsuit to you, have you served everything, and you've got to answer it, and you have to do all the processes. And then that's like lawyering up.
Right.
And in my business experiences, that's just not always the best way. It's maybe the last resort. In a condominium association, I'd say it's almost just foolish spending money after money.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, unless Cheryl has a lot of free time and a lot of money to burn, I mean, there's really not a point.
No, the big thing is you have a disconnect again, and we've talked about it now for going on a year, communication.
Yep.
And, it's who shot John, so to speak, and somebody hasn't picked up the phone and said, Cheryl, or I'm the treasurer or the board member or the president. Would you mind could we just get a cup of coffee and let's talk through this?
Yeah.
And sit down with her and just listen and see what her concerns are and try to understand her perspective.
It seems oftentimes that even on the board side, a lot of times they're often quick to commit to some sort of action rather than some sort of resolution.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly, somebody sat there and said, write her a letter, somebody call the cops, whatever. And that's bad judgment. Yeah. It's because it's not the first. They're a community. They're all neighbors. At the end of the day, we're not talking about the police chief downtown Tampa and you're sitting there and you're, doing something at your house and they've got to decide with a call for the cops. This is a community.
Yeah. And there's two legitimate issues here.
Yeah.
Because if the security guard is hanging out on the clock and he's hanging out in the pool, throwing kids around, that sort of thing, not only is that a violation, of course, of his responsibilities, but also he could be opening them up to liability because if any of those kids get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. On the other hand, again, the board does need to show some concern over the fact that there's somebody at the pool taking pictures of children that are not their own.
Yeah, there's a lot of communication gaps there, and I think people sitting down and being of cooler minds would solve 90% of it.
All right, so Cheryl, thank you so much. It's unfortunate that you got this situation going on, but we would encourage you to maybe take that first step, attend a board meeting, or try to schedule a one-on-one, maybe with one of the board members that you're willing to sit down and talk with, and maybe smooth this out a different way. And
I want our listeners to, everybody's quick to say, let's go sue them or whatever. I've been in business now for 45 years at a C level of some pretty large companies. Mm-hmm. And the minute you lawyer up, there's only one set of winners in that gig. And I promise you, it's the lawyers.
It's the lawyers, that's right.
Yeah, and when you start, now if you're lawyering up for a real legitimate thing, maybe, but when you get to what I call dispute resolutions, there's just no good outcome. So the first thing is their board ought to be reaching out, or she should reach out and say, Sue, or whoever the president is, could I just buy you a cup of coffee? Buy her a cup of coffee at a First Watch or some restaurant, and spend $5, because the minute you call an attorney, you're going to spend $5,000.
Yeah, just to talk to them.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Cheryl. That again, it seems like it's a unique situation, but again, I'm sure that this type of vendor misconduct, is something that's actually quite common, I think, in a lot of communities.
We went out on a site for an owner 2 weeks ago. Same deal. She was already lawyering up. She wanted to lawyer up. I took all her files and reviewed them and there was miscommunication of all these communications going through because nobody ever talked.
Well, and also sometimes you just got to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Look, I love email. I love text messaging, but at the end of the day, things get lost in translation.
Oh, totally.
Tone gets lost in translation.
Totally.
And sometimes you just need to pick up the phone and figure out what's really going on.
I'd say all the time.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So again, joining us today, Scott Wilcox, our disaster coach, who we had to pry, scratching and clawing from the field, who is out there trying to do some incredible work, trying to get people back up and running in their homes, get them back to some level of normalcy. In the Tampa Bay area, which is the area you and your company cover, we were incredibly fortunate, despite the fact that really the eye of the hurricane came through here, just east of here, through what's the Lakeland area. But we're seeing varying degrees of damage.
We really are, yeah.
At least for most of my friends, fortunately, it was fallen trees, sometimes on their home, sometimes not. And the one thing that we were talking about just before the show started was how this was really opening people's eyes up to issues they didn't even know they had in their home, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, some of the issues we were having on the homeowner side for HOA homeowner, I don't want to say it's funny because right now we're dealing with a lot of things, but we something I have never encountered before is part of a homeowner's disaster plan is fill up your bathtub, in case the water goes out, you have a supply to be able to flush the toilet. Yep. And people draining their bathtubs, and we have been I don't want to use the word overwhelmed, but we have seen a lot of homes where the bathtub would leak now. Never saw that before. So as an example, so this hurricane is bringing out a lot of unforeseen things, from bathtub leaks, roof leaks, window leaks that were never there before, but this hurricane brought them out. So there's Tampa Bay area, we have a lot of little things going on that are adding up to be big problems.
Well, and while what you do, you come in and again, if you had flooding, if you had leak, if you had, you come in and help them kind of get their home back to what it was prior to the storm. Let's talk about, because I know we discussed this in the previous episode. For those of you listening, go to our YouTube channel, look up Scott's name on our YouTube channel. We've talked about disaster recovery before, and I know we talked about it on that episode, but now that Hurricane Irma has passed, and let's hope that, that's the only storm we have to deal with this season. But when something like this happens, what is the first thing they should do following the storm's passing?
I think there's kind of two things. The following the storm, you got to do an assessment. You got to do a personal assessment. Your family, your personal. Did your disaster plan work? Did you have some level of comfort when the power was out? Did it work? Did your plan work?
Right.
Evaluate your plan. Number two, evaluate your property. You got to get out there and look. You do not have to wait for a company such as mine to come out and document. You can document your own things. Check out your property for damage and get that insurance claim going. Just every aspect of service that is associated with damage, utilities, your government, your first responders, your insurance adjusters, everybody is overwhelmed. So get that claim going ASAP so your adjuster can respond accordingly.
Well, we had Christy Demers-Kroll, who is in the insurance industry, both on the residential and the commercial side, also 2 episodes ago. So definitely look her up as well if you are in the process of filing an insurance claim, because she gave a lot of great information as to what you need to do to make that process as smooth as possible, because it's going to be a tedious process regardless of how prepared or not prepared you are. So you want to make that as easy for yourself as possible, and she gives a lot of really good feedback on how to do that. Got about a minute left here, but we'll talk about in the next segment again some of the trends you're seeing, but again how maybe this is really a wake-up call for a lot of people to address some of the issues, and also how even if you think you got off scot-free with no damage, how there may be still some issues that you haven't even considered to your home that you may need to take a look at a little bit closer before you decide to pass on filing that insurance claim. Yeah,
there's something in the next segment. It's called the sponge effect. Okay. We'll talk about that in the next segment, but there's a lot of unforeseen things.
Scott Wilcox, disaster coach with us, head coach, Dean Akers. It's the Condo Coaches radio show. And don't forget, before we go to the break, we've got these 6 booklets here for you to download. Free downloads right now at thecondocoaches.com/playbook. Thecondocoaches.com/playbook. I'll tell you what these booklets are when we come back right after the break. It's the Condo Coaches radio show.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
With everything you've done to lift up those around you during your military career, we're not going to let your money concerns get you down. We're the NFCC, and we've got your back on this one. As your financial advocate, we're dedicated to improving the financial health of all members of the military community. Whether your debt issues are related to student loans or housing, or involve credit cards, our goal is to help you to defend your financial future. NFCC certified credit counselors have already made the difference for thousands of military members and their families. Let us make a difference for you and yours. Schedule a confidential financial review with an objective nonprofit NFCC financial counselor. Call us today at 877-404-6322. That's 877-404-6322. Or visit us at nfcc.org/military. You owe it to yourself. Get relief now.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you again. If you haven't done so already, head over to our website, thecondocoaches.com/playbook. That's thecondocoaches.com/playbook, and I'll only hold up 3 of these because we're now at 6 of them, and I'm already having a hard time getting these all up. I'm going to hold them right there. These are our playbooks, and what they are is they are a series of booklets that are going to help you be a better board member for your community or homeowner association, or even if you're a resident. These are a great read, and they're an easy read. Okay, these have been, designed basically for you to read in a single sitting, but they cover an incredible variety of topics that you need to know if you are sitting on a board or if you just moved into a community with an association. So we've got topics like the ABCs of holding elections, collecting delinquent association fees. This one was actually our first booklet, but it's the top 10 most important things you need to know if you are a board member, but also, again, incredibly good information for even just residents so you know what your board members are going through. Understanding your community's finances, probably the biggest issue that most communities have is a lack of understanding or even basic understanding of your community's finances. If you want a free financial assessment for your community, that's something the Condo Coaches are willing to do for you. So hit us up on our website or at our email address. And again, the other booklets are there for you to download. Basically, once you fill out the form and you prove to us that you're a living, breathing human being, we actually let you download the booklets right then and there from our website. Or we actually, in addition to, we email you a copy of the booklet right to your email address that you provide us with. So head on over to thecondocoaches.com/playbook. These are absolutely free and incredibly valuable. We've printed thousands of these, and we continue to do so because they are in such high demand.
And we're about ready to do number 7.
That's right.
Which number 7 is going to be really unique because it's for property owners.
That's right. It's for the residents. And, we hear from every week, as you can tell by the emails, we hear from board members and we hear from residents, and we love it because, again, this is a team effort really to keep these communities running smoothly, and everybody lives there. You're all neighbors. Those of you on the board, you're volunteers, and we want to make sure that, everybody just gets along. And just creates a better community for everyone involved. All right, Scott Wilcox, disaster coach, is our guest for the day. Head coach Dean Akers with us. We were talking about, of course, now next steps following a disaster like Hurricane Irma. And so this is incredibly relevant no matter what part of the state you're in, because everyone was affected. I had friends in Tallahassee who also had some minor damages and things that they needed to address following Hurricane Irma. We were touching on really the issues that this kind of brought to light. Mm-hmm. You mentioned real briefly, the fact that people didn't even know they had leaky windows, right? They had issues with their bathtubs leaking, be it under the tub or maybe just something wasn't quite right with the tub. what are maybe some of the other kind of issues that people need to be aware of that they can address now, even before the next storm comes?
Right. And a lot of people, they're going to be in a waiting game, where they're still waiting for power, you're waiting for your adjuster to come out. There is going to be a lot of waiting. So we need some patience out there, obviously. But I mentioned in the other segment, the sponge effect.
Okay.
We have two issues with a hurricane. We have wind and we have rain, water, whether it be water from the sky or water that comes up. Your house is basically a sponge. Your drywall, your insulation, your baseboards, they all hold water. And just because the rain has passed, the waters have receded, it looks dry and it feels dry, does not mean that it's dry. And those sponges need to be taken care of. So take off your baseboards, do a little flood cut, what we call a flood cut, a 24-inch cut or a 4-foot cut of your drywall. You can go ahead and do those things. You do not need to wait for your insurance adjuster. In your policy, I think there's a little disclaimer in there that you have an obligation to take action to preserve your home in the event of damage. So there are things you can do. Remove the wet padding.
And this is if you've definitely had flooding.
If you definitely have flooding, you
Yeah.
definitely have water. Remove the carpet if you need to, but get rid of the pad. Get rid of your sponges, which are insulation, drywall, baseboard, carpet padding, and even carpet.
Yeah, and they should do that immediately. I mean,
Yes. If you cannot get help immediately, you need to do that immediately.
right. Well, and even we saw with Lakewood Church, and I know it was a big controversial topic during Harvey, right? But we saw Lakewood Church immediately following Hurricane Harvey, the pictures that did surface of the facility, because they did have some flooding at the ground level. They had some storm doors in place to prevent the water from rising above the ground level. But we saw in some of those early pictures that came out from the facility where they had already cut that drywall at about a 3 to 4 foot height.
Yep. And the reason is, having some water in your house, okay, that's not a big deal. It's the after effects of the water. It's that green scary stuff or that black scary stuff we don't like to talk about. It's the mold issues that come. Yeah. Mold needs two things to grow and be hazardous. It needs water and it needs an organic food source such as wood and your drywall paper.
Well, you talked about the fact that not only is the drywall porous, but the insulation, the beams that are within, in between the drywall.
Exactly.
And
a lot of sponges. We gotta get rid of those sponges so we can dry it out properly.
And that's something that's fairly easy to do. I mean, you don't have to
Correct.
wait on a contractor or anybody to come and help you do that.
Yeah, if you want it done the right way, you want to get your contractor out. But you can go ahead and start that process. Yeah. What's important is if you are in a position where you have to do it yourself, document. Take lots of before pictures. Take lots of after pictures. You're going to need that for
at every
when the adjuster
stage,
comes.
really.
You really do.
So when you take off the baseboards, when you start cutting off that drywall.
Correct. Do it like I would do it if I was a professional in your home. We do it before, during, after, during that stage. You need to do it yourself also if you're in that position where you're forced to do it yourself. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I know that for you specifically, your company deals with mostly what's happening on the interior of the home. Mm-hmm. But also, I mean, just walking my dogs immediately following the storm, I saw some shingles lying around here and there. And so while, I've said, that we were incredibly fortunate and blessed that I didn't see any visible damage to my home, the concern now is obviously what you don't see, right? And the fact that a broken shingle may mean that there's maybe a lot more shingles out there.
Absolutely.
And you may have a patch of roof that may be open that you can't see because you're not getting up on your roof.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of hidden things. We've been dealing with a lot of homeowners who have never had a leaking roof before. I mean, a leaking roof or a leaking window before. And now their window is, just water is gushing through it. Those wind-driven rains can certainly do a lot of things. So you're going to have to get up there into the attic. If you're in a position where you're going to be doing things by yourself, you're going to have to inspect your attic. You're going to have to look inside. If you see missing shingles up there, you're going to have to kind of do a little hunting and pecking. Feel around for wet insulation. Look at the insulation. There might be a little puddle or indication right there. Windows a little bit more tricky. My particular company, one of the services we provide as a condo coach, we will do a free evaluation and a free inspection of your home. So if you have an issue, give us a call. We'll come out and look at that for you.
Great.
And kind of help you in the direction where you need to go. But it's going to take a little bit of thorough searching. You might have to peel back your carpet a little bit under your windows. Water likes to hide. Water loves to be mysterious.
Oh, well, I know for a fact my mom, in fact, who lives down in South Florida, had an outstanding issue with a window, with water intrusion through a window. I mean, she must have had 3 or 4 different contractors come out and try to fix it. And I don't think, honestly, even till the day she sold the house, I don't think she ever truly got it fixed. And so who knows what really was the underlying issue there. But the truth of the matter is that if you don't address it now, again, it could be Maria, it could be whatever the next storm is down the road, but it's going to continue to be an issue for you in your home.
And just remember, a little bit of water over a long period of time made the Grand Canyon. So a little bit of water over a long period of time in your home can be quite damaging. So make sure, and no matter what you do in this situation, we're all going to have to be a little patient, like I said, but if you bring in a professional to help you, make sure that professional is reputable. They have the proper licensing. They are a building contractor, whether residential or general. Make sure if someone in my industry, they're going to be dealing with water issues or mold issues, they have the proper certifications and licensing. I like to use this phrase, bub in a pickup truck. Don't use your bub in a pickup truck. Wait if you need to, but at this stage in the game with Irma and how widespread the damage is, you have to get a professional.
Yeah.
A reputable person to come in and help you out.
The I know a guy excuse doesn't quite cut it, after a situation like this.
You're going to be paying for that in the long run if you're going to be doing the handyman stuff.
Well, you mentioned you're going to head up to head over to St. Pete.
Head to St. Pete after this,
and check out some condominiums. One thing that I know, again, from not associated with a disaster, but just from experiences from friends who've lived in condominiums, is of course the unknown, right, between your unit and the unit above, or the unit to the side. When you go to these condos, what are some of the things you're going to be looking for?
Well, these particular units I'm going to be going to, it is a window issue. And unfortunately, a lot of homeowners in these condominiums assume that the window is part of the building. And in many cases, the windows in a condominium, you own those windows. You don't own necessarily the community owns the structure, but that window frame, that window pane is yours and your responsibility. There's going to be 2 units I'm going to be looking at this afternoon where it was a wind-driven rain issue. And they sent me some pictures, and I looked at them, and I think they've actually had some leaks that have been happening for a long time.
Yeah.
This hurricane just kind of brought them out. One concern also is you have a window leak, your floor got wet. What about your downstairs neighbor? They might also be affected by that also. So we're going to be hunting the keys this afternoon and try to get downstairs as well and see if they suffered anything, because the downstairs neighbor was out of the country when this happened. So
well, like you said, you want to look for those signs, right? You want to because again, all of this stuff is incredibly porous. It will absorb the water. What are some of the visual cues that people can look for to determine whether or not they need someone like yourself to come out and do something about it?
Discoloration of your paint, musty smells, and bugs. If you start to see bugs really hanging out in a certain area that's never been in there before, bugs love water. And bugs love musty smells and rotting wood. So those are my 3 things I always look for without having to tear things apart.
Yeah.
Peeling paint, discoloration, and little critters.
Yeah, because again, from my mom's water intrusion issue, I know that you'd kind of get this little bit of a glossy look on the ceiling from the water that was coming through from the second story window down into the living room, and so it looked just off, just slightly off, and that's when you knew that right after that really bad thunderstorm that some more water had gotten into the house.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So, but call on professional. We're here to help you guys out. But those are the key things you need to look for. Any sort of discoloration, things that haven't been there before. Let's dig a little deeper.
All right, we're talking to Scott Wilcox, disaster coach, here following now week 2 after Hurricane Irma, and now with Hurricane Maria just hanging out in the Caribbean and potentially on its way back towards Florida again. Let's hope that's not the case. But again, we've been very fortunate so far for the Tampa Bay area. Very fortunate, that Irma took the path that it did. But needless to say, there's still a lot that you need to be aware of post-disaster. So more on this on the Condo Coaches radio show. Don't forget to check out our website. We'll be right back with the next segment.
Contact the Condo Coaches online at thecondocoaches.com. More of the Condo Coaches is coming up next.
Life is full of bittersweet transitions. It's difficult to know how these changes will impact us over time. For some people, difficult transitions like retirement, divorce, or loss of a loved one can hit harder than expected. and may contribute to feelings of hopelessness or even thoughts of suicide. The risk of suicide is even higher for men over 50 who served our country. Guys like me. That's why support from friends and family makes such a big difference. Every day, your actions could help save a life. Together, we got this. Learn how you can help save a life at veteranscrisisline.net.
Welcome back to the Condo Coaches, online at thecondocoaches.com. Here's your host, Johnny Torres.
Thank you again to everyone listening, watching, wherever you may be doing so. I usually love talking about everywhere people can get the Condo Coaches radio show, and I've actually been so consumed by all this hurricane talk the last few episodes I've forgotten to do it. But you can get this show just about anywhere you like to consume your media online. And so, of course, there's our website, thecondocoaches.com. You can find every episode on YouTube at youtube.com. Just search for The Condo Coaches. And I know a lot of you are doing it because we see all the numbers and the analytics on the back end. And so a lot of people searching for The Condo Coaches. You can also podcast the show on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and of course iTunes, my favorite. So you get an audio version of the show. You don't have to look at our ugly mugs. You can just listen to us on your daily commute. And again, we have every single episode on here. So Christy, who's our insurance coach, has been on here twice. Scott's been on here twice now. And there's an incredible wealth of information there waiting for you, especially for situations like this, like what we're talking about post-Hurricane Irma, and then, now maybe Hurricane Maria. Before I get back on the topic, I just want to give a quick shout out to all the amazing radio stations who also carry the show. AM 860, The Answer here in Tampa Bay, AM 1230, the talk station in the Palm Beaches, AM 660 and 105.5 FM, The Answer in Orlando, and AM 880, The Biz in Miami. Thank you so much for all to all those radio stations who carry this great radio show, and please, we love to hear what station you listen to us on, because that lets us know that we're on the best suited radio station in your market to reach people like yourself. So as we find ourselves now with maybe a window here between storms, and a lot of what you do is disaster recovery, so you're helping a lot of folks who were directly impacted by Irma, but now with Maria potentially in the wings. Let's say they're waiting, right? They're on hold. They're in line for a company like yours or other services like yours to come in and help them fix their windows or their flooring or their drywall, whatever it is. But it seems like maybe you're not going to get to them in time because of this next storm. What do you recommend in that kind of a situation? What are some of the things that they can do to not exacerbate the problem if another storm comes by?
Well, if anybody is in that position where you're on a waiting list, where you weren't part of a program to begin with, and you just simply Googled a company and said, well, we're going to be a couple weeks before we can get to you. I think the best thing you can do to protect your home until you can get that help, it comes back to those sponges. You really need to just get that carpet padding out of there, get that carpet out of there, cut that drywall out of those troubled areas. I'm not going to recommend on this program that, hey, you go out there with a tube of caulking and try to caulk everything yourself. You could make the problem worse. That's certainly an option for you. There's all sorts of products you can buy and purchase to do that. For those kind of issues when you're dealing with structural integrity, and windows are part of the structural integrity of a home, that needs to be done by a professional. You do have a way to do it yourself, but I'm not going to recommend it.
So maybe if you didn't have shutters or plywood and that sort of thing, you want to make sure that if another storm is on its way, maybe to reinforce that particular problem area. Yeah, maybe address that, prioritize that problem area so that it doesn't become a larger problem following another storm.
Yeah, look at what I call your sponges. Yeah. And get those out of that problem area.
Because the truth of the matter is, and we saw this with Irma. Irma was coming here through the Tampa Bay area. I think at one point, just from a personal reference that I realized, it was hitting like the Sarasota area. Yet Port St. Lucie, which is on the complete opposite side of the state, was still seeing 100-mile-an-hour winds.
Yes,
I mean, it was remarkable. And I realized that Irma was also much larger than any storm we'd seen before. But the truth of the matter is that whether the storm is hitting us directly or indirectly, we are going to get weather coming off of that system.
Yeah, real. It's east and west or in the middle. You're going to get wet. You're going to get some wind, no matter what. So, and this was an enormous storm. I have to admit, I'm a sixth-generation Floridian, and this one got my blood pressure up a little bit. I have to admit that. When I saw number 4 right over my house on the forecasting, this one really made me and my wife, we had to kind of assess what we were doing, and we've never prepared to this level before.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people and a lot of communities, a lot of independent homeowners, a lot of condominiums, I think you really need to assess your disaster plan. Did it work?
Well, and also in the Tampa Bay area, we dodged a bullet. So we need to be very careful we don't become complacent. We're broadcasting out of Tampa Bay. The lower West Coast, Naples, they're devastated. And a friend of mine has a place in the Keys, and it's gone. So there's places that have been really impacted.
I mean, the most high profile example of that, Jimmy Johnson, former coach of the Dolphins and the Cowboys, and and he talks about it. He goes, "Look, I'm incredibly fortunate to be in the position that I'm in because I have the money and the resources to rebuild, but the Keys is incredibly devastated."
Yeah.
There are entire islands that have been wiped out where they've had to evacuate anyone who did survive the storm because there's nothing left. There's no infrastructure. There's no supplies. There's nothing for them there. And so these are entire islands that were wiped out from this. But again, take it as a warning. Because again, it could be next week, could be next month, but we're still in the middle of hurricane season, and so you want to keep an eye out. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is drones, right? So there's
a lot of insurance agents who have been picking up drones and doing overview shots.
Yeah.
Even adjusters are getting into this trend now. I find it to be incredibly helpful. I don't use one personally, but to do overview assessments, I think it's a great idea. Ask your agent about that and your agency that you work with about that. Hey, do you have a drone program? It helps in the long run.
And if it doesn't, I mean, there are photographers, videographers out there that do have this technology. Maybe you can, pay them a small amount to come out for an hour. It shouldn't take more than an hour for them to fly the drone around your house just to make sure. Again, and we highly suggest you have somebody come and do this instead of you getting up on your roof. Obviously, if you're in a multi-story condominium, nobody's going to get up there other than a professional. And so this is maybe even a more cost-effective approach to see if you see even the slightest issue up there, then you do need to have a professional come up and get on that roof.
Yeah, exactly. And with disaster, right now we're in disaster recovery. We might be coming back around to disaster preparedness, and I'm working both sides of that. So if you are a condominium or an HOA community that needs to reassess your plan because you found some deficiencies, give the Condo Coaches a call. I'll come out, I'll take a look at it, I'll sit down with your board, I'll sit down with your committee, whatever you have there, and kind of talk about some of the things that I've seen out there, what works and doesn't work. I want to help you guys prepare.
Yeah, and let's talk about that hurricane assessment because, again, that's a great service that you're going to provide. So once people have gotten their house in order, because this also needs to apply to their amenities, right? All of the amenities that are available to residents.
Exactly.
And, they need to go through, and sometimes they may not go through it as thoroughly, right? Because it's not where they reside.
Yeah, they used a boilerplate program or something that doesn't really pertain or customize to their community. So you really have to customize every single plan. I know we talked about the last show, every community is different, and you need a plan for your individual community.
For some of these areas that were subject to flooding, high waters, that sort of thing, did you see anything out there, any techniques, any type of tools or anything that kind of helped maybe soften the blow of some of those issues?
Well, when it comes to flooding, especially if a river rises, a lake rises, it's just get out. I mean, that's all I can really tell you. There's really not a lot you can do to stop that river.
Because I always see people with the sandbags and that sort of thing, but I also question, really how effective is that?
Yeah, if storm surge is 12 feet plus, just get out. Yeah. No sandbag in the world is going to stop that.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, we're still seeing essentially the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, not only from a recovery standpoint, but from a natural standpoint, from a weather standpoint, the fact that now these rivers are I don't know what the proper term is, but the water is just coming back, to a lot of these rivers, and more so They thought that this was what was going to happen along Bayshore here in Tampa Bay, where the water receded incredibly.
Just sucked it all out.
Oh,
that
my
was
gosh.
amazing to see. Yeah.
It was incredible. I mean,
but all that's tidal. What you're seeing now, which happens that people don't realize, and some people are getting whacked, is the rivers are passing their flood crest stage, because all that sheets of water everywhere are now making their way there.
They're draining into
and
the
then
river.
draining out into the Gulf of Mexico.
Got it.
Or wherever. So the rivers are the big issue is rivers right now.
Yeah. Well, again, Scott, thank you so much for being on the
pleasure.
show. We'd love to help others out there with their hurricane assessment or post-hurricane assessment. If you're having any issues like this in terms of your recovery, reach out to us. help@thecondocoaches.com is our email address. That's help@thecondocoaches.com. You can also call us, 813-331-5415, 813-331-5415. And, of course, you can catch every episode of The Condo Coaches on our website, thecondocoaches.com. That's thecondocoaches.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We love putting videos up there. This one will be up there later on. And of course, our podcast. We love doing the podcast. A lot of people across the country really listening to our podcast version as well. And you can get that on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you so much for listening. That's another Condo Coaches in the bag. Say goodbye, Dean.
Goodbye.
You've been listening to The Condo Coaches, brought to you by lmfunding.com. Find us online at thecondocoaches.com and join us this same time next week as we help you navigate life in your managed community.